Martin Truex didn't make the playoffs. Let's talk about it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, Martin Truex did not make the playoffs, and to a lot of people, this is one of the reasons they do not like the playoffs. The guy who was basically top 5 in points all season has not made the playoffs, and in fact, with 3 top 5s, 12 top 10s, and 7 stage wins, the most stage wins of anybody else this season. Also, with 456 laps led, Martin Truex does not make the playoffs. And to show how glaring this gap is, Martin Truex is now the 17th man in points. The next closest competitor is over 200 points behind him, Erik Jones, because he has just had such a good season that, well, it's just kind of a shame that he is not in the playoffs. So let's take a look at why it is kind of a shame that he's not in the playoffs and what it says about our current playoff structure as a point system. The first issue I have with it is the guys that have great seasons like Martin Truex are knocked out of the playoffs by guys who basically either win by circumstance or hit the setup for one race but have not been consistent all season, and therein lies the problem. A points system is supposed to reward a champion. A champion is supposed to be the race car driver that has the best season, and I think this is the underlying flaw. In fact, let's look at the definition of the word champion real quick. A person who has defeated or surpassed all rivals in a competition, especially in sport. So nowhere in there does it say a guy who lucked up and got a win, right? So let's just be honest with it. A lot of these guys that are in this playoff, they got a win, but they have not had a season to where if they somehow get on a roll and win this championship, you would not consider them a traditional champion in the sense of the definition that we just read. So that is probably the biggest problem with this point system, and Martin Truex being top 5 in points and not making the playoffs basically emphasizes that. Now, I have made many episodes about how I want season-long points. I'm not going to make another video about that, but here's the Cliff Notes versions. If you haven't seen those videos, I think you should do season-long points, and you should award a significant amount of points for finishing first, because I think that is fair. For instance, if there are 40 race car drivers, you award 40 points all the way down to the last driver who would get 1 point. So the last driver gets 1 point. The driver that finishes first gets 40 points, but you should also get a bonus for winning the race, and I say that should be about a third of your points for winning that race. So in this situation, it would be 13 points. So in this case, the driver who wins the race would get 53 points. The second place driver would get 39 points. That's a big enough gap, I think, to where basically what everybody wanted, they wanted wins to count more. So now wins count more, and the second place driver would get way less points, and that would sort of even it out. So you could still have a consistent season and compete and possibly win a championship without winning a race, but it would be very difficult to win a championship without winning a race under that point structure. But I've made several videos about that before, so now I would like to look at, if you want to keep the playoffs, how should we address the playoffs for those of you who want to keep the playoffs? So if you were going to do a playoff system, the first glaring thing that I would do is I would not make it 16 drivers that get in. 16 drivers getting in is literally over half of the competitive cars on the racetrack. I believe that there are less than 30 competitive race cars that could legitimately win every weekend. Now, some guys can get on a hot streak and win, or get a good setup and win maybe here and there, but they're not going to be competing every week. I think you've got about 25 competitive drivers, and putting 16 in, or at least 25 competitive teams, a lot of really good drivers out there, not necessarily in good equipment, but 16 out of 25 or 28 is way too many. I think you need to limit it to either 10 or maybe 12. So that would be the first thing I would do. That would make it more exclusive, and you would feel more like there was a champion coming from that. So you can argue and fuss about this guy should have been in 16th or not, but when you cut it down to 10, you can say definitely we got the 10 best drivers here. And I hear the counter criticism right now. You're like, oh, Martin Truex wouldn't be in under what you're saying right now, and you're making this whole video based on Martin Truex. Well, under the playoff system I'm recommending, Martin Truex would be in, because we would go to the point system I mentioned earlier, where you get 53 points for the win, 39 points for second place. Under that particular point structure, Martin Truex would be in. I almost said Martin. Martin Truex would be in this particular set under this particular guideline. So I think those would be the big two things. The other thing is you set all the points down to 0 at the beginning of the playoff. Okay, so now you've got 10 drivers, you've set it to 0, and they all just go from there. They start from a blank sheet. If you got the season-long champion, you want to give him a little bump in points, give him 15 or 20 points for winning the season championship. That way he's sort of almost, safe for at least one race, you would think. So that would be the next thing. And for those of you who want to have cutoffs, you just cut off 3 drivers each race, and you still get, not each race, but each set of 4 races, I guess, or whatever, and then you have your championship race, and that would be how you got rid of your drivers. So 3 drivers eliminated, and then another 3 drivers eliminated, then you would have your final 4 if you so chose to have that particular elimination thing. I don't personally think the elimination thing would be a big deal under my setup, but if you would like to eliminate drivers just for the fun of it, there you go. You could have your elimination. Eliminate 3 drivers until you get to the final race, and then you got your final 4. So that is how I would do it if I were fixing the playoffs. But it exposes probably the 2 biggest things, Martin Truex not being in this. It exposes the 2 biggest problems I have with the point system. The win and you're in mentality that creates wreck fests. It has watered down the racing because everybody is just trying to win. There is no racecraft. They're running into each other. They're just running all over each other. The plate racing is almost unwatchable, especially when you put a plate race as the cutoff race. And the other thing is, it doesn't necessarily award a champion in the traditional sense of the word. It doesn't reward the guy who has had the best season, the driver who has had the best season. It just awards the guy who sort of possibly got hot at the right time. Now, that being said, I'm not taking anything away from drivers that have won championships under this playoff format. The rules were the same for everybody going in. They are the champions. I'm not throwing any shade at them or anything like that. I'm just saying, in the traditional word of champion, some of those drivers would not be considered a champion. So going forward, you need to do one of 2 things. Either go to the season-long point system that I said, or something similar to it that I mentioned in this one, or go to the playoff system that I mentioned in this one, because those 2 formats would reward a more traditional champion that you can compare to other generations of champions. All right, this is my tri-annual griping about the points, old man yelling at the people on his lawn. This is my tri-annual. I've probably got one more coming. I think I've done 2 so far, but this is my tri-annual griping about the points video. If you made it this far, feel free to subscribe down below. I appreciate all you guys that are subscribed, and I would really appreciate it if you subscribe. It helps out the channel a whole lot. If you got a comment or question, leave it down in the comments, and I'll try to get to as many I can. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace. Oh, and one more thing, actually, before I go. Ron Hutcherson, 79 years old, former Cup Series driver. We lost him over the weekend, so thoughts and prayers go out to his family. He will be missed. All right, that's it. I'm really gone now. See you later.